Welcome to Sports Doc Talk. I don't know. I got this vertical thing going on. Hold on. Let's go. There we go. That's our look. Will Sanchez along with Dr. Grant Garcia, our orthopedic surgeon, sports specialist. How are you, Dr. Garcia?
I'm good. It's a good day. And we got a new logo in the back. So we're going to learn a little bit about this. You never know what's going to be up there.
Follow us. Dr. Garcia is constantly changing his background. We started out with a promise in early September, rooting for the Giants, having the Giants background. And apparently Dr. Garcia has put the kibosh on the Giants with the background. So now he's going with different backgrounds for all our shows. It's still not working. I'm not sure what we need to do next. Maybe I need to change the blue light to a red light or a yellow light or green light. Oh, you know what? I should have done green light for today's show because we have a phenomenal guest. But before we get to our guest, let's kind of give a little housekeeping here and give a little shout out to our sponsors, the Recovery Shop. Garcia, this is your bread and butter. Take it away.
All right. Well, again, it's awesome. I talked to Mike and those guys, and they said that they've had some people contact from the show interested. I had a surgeon that sent me a patient that asked to use this because the patients love it. So the idea behind Recovery Shop is any of your performance things that you want after surgery. People kept asking, I want more. You're doing all the cutting edge tools, but what else can I have? What else can you get me to get me better? And we've seen some of these different products on this show with the Nice Machine, the nutrition supplementation, the Rebliss, you name it. So now my patients can go to this sort of page that's mine and get whatever they need in terms of that for their recovery. So if you are a surgeon, you're interested in this, or you're a surgeon, you're about to get surgery and you want your surgeon to offer this, reach out to them, and Mike likes and be contacted directly. So it's easier for you. Again, I got no say in this other than the sponsorship. So just use this direct line. And hopefully you enjoy it for your patients. And I've been super happy. So.
Yeah, it's great for everyone. And we're going to tease our own website at sportsdoctalk.com. You can find transcripts. You can find previous shows. You could go to YouTube. Check us out. Your favorite listening podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple, you name it. So I am doing a shameless plug, maybe not so shameless plug of our show and all the great guests that we've had on. Are you tired of listening to me talk at this point? Should we tease who's about to come on our segment and what they do?
Yeah, I think we mix it up each time. So let's do a little quick intro for the viewers and also the listeners to hear what's up next.
All right, here we go.
The future of sports medicine is a biologic-based solution. We owe it to our patients to bring the most up-to-date technology that will make their recovery easier and also allow for them to heal faster. It's forming new bone within 24 months. It integrates so there's no trace left behind.
We have gotten away from using truly artificial means and restoring the body to its native structures. Ossio fiber is going to revolutionize sports medicine.
Dr. Garcia, we're really excited to have our guest. We have Brennan Marilla, and I know the last name. I know how to say it. Let's go. Brennan Marilla, thank you so much. He's our Chief Commercial and Operating Officer at Ossio. Thank you for taking some time and to join us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for playing that video. That video always gets me pumped up every time I see it. So hope you enjoyed it.
It's a great video. Before we get into all the toys that Dr. Garcia likes to use, and obviously what you're providing, just for our listeners and viewers, we reached out to you a couple weeks ago. We were trying to plan an earlier show, and unfortunately, like so many others affected by the hurricane season, you were affected with the hurricane that came through, hitting the Tampa and Orlando region. First and foremost, before we get to the show, how are you? How's your family doing? What's going on? Because that was some scary, scary stuff.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for asking. This is a rental home we're in, and I'm grateful to be in this house. And I've got my two adult children with me too here. So we're back to a family of four because my kids also had their places flooded. But we have a house on a barrier island here in the kind of the Sarasota area, and unfortunately, Helene flooded our house, so we had about 2 feet of water throughout the entire house. So while we were in the process of removing, you know, all of our furniture and all of our things and ripping out the drywall and the insulation, you know, kind of there's a race against time for, you want to get it out before the mold sets.
Yeah.
In the middle of all that, we had to evacuate because Milton was coming. And
Unbelievable.
you know, so it was kind of a 1-2 punch. It's been kind of a wild month for us. But I think we're starting to kind of get our feet under us now. And, you know, life is starting to get back to normal, but we're starting the long rebuild process now, but everybody's safe. And, you know, the community has been great. And I think, yeah, we'll be back soon.
Do you have them? Do you have the kids now doing chores? Are they raking leaves, throwing out the garbage, loading up the dishwasher? Like, are you taking advantage of the full labor that maybe is happening in the house, or now they're too grown and they can't be told what to do? What's going on there?
Yeah, no, I'm cracking the whip just like the good old days.
Smart man.
You know,
I love it.
Yeah, they're living rent free right now, so. You know, now I have to just kind of negotiate things, you know, like I need you to do this, I need you to do that. You won't have to pay utilities if you take the trash out. So you know, when they become adults, you have to do a little bit more negotiating, cutting deals versus just telling them to go to their room.
So I'm learning so much from this. Well, anyhow, I'm glad you're safe. Everything's good. We're really excited to have you on here. I know it's been a lot going on in your life, but this product, you guys have heard about it before on our show. This idea of harder than, you know, some of the other competitors on the market, turns into bone faster, and replacing metal. And honestly, this is just what patients have been asking for. I mean, I know that the couple shows I put out before had questions about this. Well, we finally have someone who's an expert on it. I've used the product. I use it a lot. I'm really pleased with it. But obviously, you know, we have experience here with one of the man himself. So we can talk about a little bit about your background and kind of why you got into Ossio before we go after the product, because it's going to be really awesome when we start talking about it. But as Will knows, we're gone once we start going after it, because it's going to be so much stuff we're going to have questions on.
All right. What are we talking about first? I'm ready to go.
Well, I love the title on the website. If you go to ossio.io, it's great. It says, "Don't settle for metal." It's the first thing that you see on the website. And right there, it is so simple. It is so catchy. And then all of a sudden, if you don't know what's happening or what it's about, just those 3 words alone already kind of puts you on the path saying, oh, wait a minute, this is something different. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the company first before you get into the product itself.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in med tech for about 30 years. Most of my career has actually been in cardiovascular, actually peripheral vascular and aortic disease. Spent most of my career at big companies. I've done some small companies, some big companies. I was at Medtronic for many years, at Covidien. You know, one thing I learned from coming from the peripheral vascular space is that the mantra in that space is, in terms of opening arteries, things like that, instead of putting stents in like they used to, the market is moving towards like shockwave ultrasound or drug-coated balloons. The mantra is leave nothing behind in the body, leave nothing permanent behind. So when Brian Verrier, who's our CEO, who I've worked with for many years at a few other companies, told me he was thinking about taking this job as the CEO, and I was at a different company. We had just sold that company, and he called me and said, you know, I'm thinking about doing some different things. There's this company, Ossio. Would you take a look at it? I just want some advice on whether I should take this job or a different job. And I said, sure, I'd love to see it. And he sat down with me and showed me kind of the management presentation and some early animal studies and the idea of osteofiber. And I said, God, I think that sounds like one of the most compelling things I've ever heard. The value proposition is obvious. I mean, you could explain to your next door neighbor, hey, wouldn't you love to have orthopedic surgery, and instead of a metal implant, you have an implant that turns into your own bone? You know, immediately they're like, of course I would want that. You know, so I thought, geez, there's a huge unmet need here. It's very compelling to patients, to surgeons, even payers. You know, it's a 510K path. It's very disruptive versus being something that's incremental. And I said, you know, you ought to take that job. And by the way, if you take that job and you raise some money, why don't you bring me on? And let's do this together, because I think this sounds really, really interesting. The other thing that caught my attention was that, again, I was new to orthopedics 7 years ago when we kind of got Ossio off the ground in the United States. But I just thought it was interesting that most of the large companies have tried this over the years. They've tried to come up with non-permanent implants because the need is obvious. The benefits are fairly obvious, but no one's really been able to quite crack the code on a non-permanent implant that's weight bearing, that is really strong and also is very biocompatible. And so that's why I thought Ossio could really be very disruptive across multiple sectors of orthopedics.
I want to chime in there. So Will, obviously I wanted you guys on the show. I've been pretty excited about the product since I first saw it myself. I would say, Will, you now have two people on this show, and I'm assuming Will's going to be that way in a minute, that when I heard about this idea, I said, I've never heard of anything like that. And then when I used it, I felt the same way. So the disruption you have here to the listeners or to Will is metal is very strong, right? Like we think of metal as like kind of what almost, I hate to say, the gold standard, right? Like
Sure.
When you're putting something in, you would never put in a plastic, you put in plastic screws in drywall, but you wouldn't put a plastic screw into wood.
Right.
I mean, it just not, now we can talk about this thing, but you wouldn't do that originally. You think it's not strong enough. And there's no products that we see out here for drywall stuff that we see that as often. In the bone, in the body, it's the same way. And so people have this idea that every time we use a product that's sort of supposed to dissolve or turn into bone, before I've seen this, they would crack. Right? Hard bone, it cracks.
Sure.
So the first time I put this into something that was hard, I was expecting it to crack. And instead, it worked just as well in terms of strength as the metal, which we're going to go to in a second. There are various different types of screws that are not metal. And I have not seen one yet that turns into bone as well, but is also as hard, which is just an extremely unique pattern. And I think that Brennan's going to go into this, but for the people that see this, it's like, there's so many different products out there, but this one seemed to figure it out. And so that I think is what the uniqueness of the product is, and what's why I want people to hear about it. And then we'll explain more of this in a minute as to why this is so important. Sorry, keep going, Brennan.
No, so what we tried to do is we wanted to create a new category called biointegrative implants. We especially didn't want to call this a bioresorbable or a biocomposite. That's not what it is. These are made differently.
And Brennan, will you explain to everybody why you didn't want to call it that?
There's just a lot of baggage, a lot of negative baggage with bioresorbables for a couple of reasons. One is they're primarily just polymer-based implants. Biocomposites introduced a little bit of minerals, some resin to kind of give it a little bit more structure, but it's still kind of powder. So basically traditional bioresorbables that have not been widely adopted in orthopedics. And that's why metal's still around 150 years later. Everybody's tried this and haven't really been able to succeed, is because polymer it's not strong enough. If you drill it in, if you nail it in, if you screw it in, sometimes they're very brittle and they'll break. Or after you fixate bone, they might not be weight bearing. They might break. But if you get them in successfully, what happens is these polymer implants can have these acidic breakdowns 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And when that happens, patient feels inflammation, pain. You guys see cystic formation, bone void, things like that. Also, the other issue is that if you want to do a revision surgery, whether it's metal or even PEEK, it's in your way. And so we thought that, if you have a technology that turns into bone, there's nothing in your way if you need to go back in for any reason. So we make these differently than the non-permanent implants of the past. And that's why we call these biointegratives, because that's really kind of the nature of how it works.
We'll put that slide back up. I think that was important, the one we just had. So to chime in on this, what he hit on is the cysts and the cracking for the biocomposite is a big concern. And the idea behind plastic, you're still leaving behind something that you got to take out.
Right.
And some of the plastics you can drill through, but some you can't. And this is a big problem. All right, Will, so here's an example. Nick Chubb, we just had the discussion. He had a revision surgery, right? there's a low chance that the surgeon used a biocomposite screw for him. So they probably used either a metal screw or a plastic screw, a PEEK screw. So when they did the second ACL for him, they had to either take them out. And by the way, everybody knows no one looks good taking out hardware. And so you're talking about stripping a screw, pulling out. I do a ton of revision ACLs. I do a ton of revision surgeries. I mean, I just had a patient today. She's doing awesome. You could see I took out all these metal from the one she had before. They've got track marks all over the inside of her bone. And I had to worry about those when I'm doing the surgery. Is it going to get in my way? Am I going to get my fixation? So there's still these things. And if they have a biocomposite, the cyst formation is actually worse, right? Taking out a screw and having a hole is frustrating. And certain surgeons can figure out different ways of doing it. But the cyst is a nightmare. And so the fact is you leave no trace. Doing a second surgery or doing a third surgery, which we never want to do, but it's like probably something I do twice a week or 3 times a week. Yeah. It makes my life so much easier. And so that's another point of it as well. So anyhow, and then can you describe the strength graph and the regeneration graph you have here?
Yeah. So the graph on the right is just kind of an illustration of kind of what we set out to do, was, the kind of the holy grail of materials, fixation materials in orthopedics should be that they're natural. They leave nothing behind, leave no trace, but they're also strong. So if you kind of look at that chart, you've got strength on one axis and you've got kind of natural bone regeneration on the other axis. You can see we're twice as strong as PEEK, or about 5 times as strong as a traditional bioresorbable. And we also have that natural bone regeneration happening. So that upper right-hand corner is kind of where you want to be in terms of orthopedic fixation materials in the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to that next slide to see if.
By the way, you mentioned hardware removal surgery. Obviously, there's a huge cost benefit here too. Obviously, patients don't want a second surgery, especially children, which is why we have a pediatric label for most of our products now. But hardware removal surgeries is one of the most common surgeries in the United States of any surgery. And
you also started insane. Foot and ankle, which is the most common, right? So as a knee surgeon, I take out plates. I don't do many metal. You're talking about a surgeon that still love this product, not being a metal guy. I'm an anti-metal surgeon if I could do it. I mean, I have to do metal occasionally, but I'm anti-metal. And I tell my patients I try not to do metal. But even that type of surgeon that does anti-metal, this product is very, very unique still. Right. So, you're comparing to metal, and that's actually the most common thing we see. But even people that don't always use metal, there's still a huge benefit of this, right? It's just that metal is the gold standard for hardness. But taking out removal of hardware is very common. And in foot and ankle, I have a bunch of really good partners. I would tell you that 30% of their surgeries are removing the hardware they put in the foot.
Exactly. And it was really important to us that we bring you guys, the surgeon community, a technology that would not have trade-offs, so that you could get the benefit, the patient benefit, you could get the benefit of leaving nothing behind and preserving your landscape without feeling like you're trading off strength or ease of use. And we've worked very, very hard at that. So the way we get our strength is this chart here, this kind of illustration here. We take basically minerals found in bones, silica, calcium, magnesium, etc. Iran, our founder, figured out how to take these minerals and how to engineer them into these long continuous fibers, kind of like fiber optic cable. And then he layers them in different directions. You layer them in different directions and you create like this matrix infrastructure. And that gives you unbelievable strength. It gives you a lot of body, a lot of structure, and a lot of strength. And as a matter of fact, we make our implant, if we make a screw differently than we make a staple or an anchor, we can just take these fibers and we orient them in different ways to dial in different mechanical properties. But each time we do that, we definitely continue to overlap and weave them so they're really, really strong. What that does is it gives you strength higher than cortical bone at time 0 through 6 months and beyond. And then over time, what happens is bone attaches to this immediately. We saw in our animal studies at 2 weeks, trabecular bone formation on the implant. The bone thinks this is bone. And then it starts to infiltrate the implant. It's a little porous. Bone cells infiltrate the implant. And then over time, it just mineralizes and just regenerates and just becomes bone. So in all of our animal studies, and in our human studies as well, but in animal studies where you can look at histology, at 2 years, there's no evidence there was ever an implant.
And Will, this is really, I want to explain to you what you said for the listeners, because obviously the surgeons get it. Med device company, people might hear this and understand some of it.
Yeah.
But Will, cortical bone's the outside of the bone. Okay. And I think, can you go to the next slide? Is that the one with the bones? So I can show them. Yes, right here, guys. Okay. So cortical bone is the surrounding bone. You guys see the bottom, that sheep study? That's cortical bone. That's the hard stuff. So like, and I don't want to gross too many viewers out. When you're drilling, you hit cortical bone, you're like, that's hard. It's like really solid. And then you go through the cancellous bones, like where the bone marrow is. That's like if you ever eat bone marrow, it's super soft and gushy. And cancellous bone is like very soft. So there's really not much there. And then you go to cortical bone. So the idea is that this is the hardest bone that you want is cortical. Like we always are looking for cortical purchase. It's like in a wall, right? Mm-hmm. You're
looking for the stud.
You're looking for the stud. That's absolutely right. But what's cool about this product is that it basically, what we're finding, and you're going to see this in a second, is that the screws are essentially turning the entire tract into cortical bone. So you're actually making the bone harder in certain spaces, which is pretty crazy to think about. So the idea is that in some of these cases, they're actually able to heal bone. You're going to see that from the knee bar study. And the idea is like helping with union, right? So if you've got you split that bone in half right there. Imagine you've got the shell casings are good, but when you put it back together, you still have the soft stuff in the middle. And that can take a little while to heal. So the idea that we're still working on is if we put that screw through the middle, in a metal one, nothing's going to grow, right? It's just going to grow around it, but not in the middle. So you're going to have a part that's not actually healed. If this turns into solid bone, are you actually going to turn this bone into like a 3-part thing? So now you're going to have a piece of cortical going through the middle, which is kind of a crazy concept. You essentially could make people's bones harder, which is really freaking wild. Yeah. I don't know, Brennan, if you were going to talk about that, but that idea to me that's one of the things we're working on is in the future, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, but over time it'll end up like it was never there. And so you know, you don't have to worry about any of these kind of like extra-articular structures and like that. On the bottom there, that's a plate study that we did years ago, a little feasibility study with sheep tibia. And what's interesting about the study is we put a plate on top. You can see in the kind of the 13-week on the far left, and then over time it looked like bone kind of tense up to the side of it, and then it all remodels back down to the cortical surface. So for us, you know, we are working towards a plate technology. But the staple that we launched a staple a year ago. We just launched a small staple that has a lot of foot and ankle applications, little hand and wrist. They do a lot of Aikens with these little 9s and 11s. But this was this helped us with the FDA in terms of getting the first non-permanent staple in the world to market. Because people wondered, we knew what happened in bone. We wanted to know what happens on bone. And this is what happens on bone. It completely remodels down to the cortical surface.
And that's incredible.
It doesn't create a speed bump. You don't have to worry about
overgrowth or exostosis.
Looking out. Yeah.
Brennan, this seems, you know, we've had so many shows with different technology, you know, different, you know, medical advances from the beginning, right? You got the phone call, you wanted join the company, things like that. But what was the process to talk to the doctors to see what worked, what didn't work? What did that look like? What was the studies? How many people did you guys talk to? Was it just, you know, United States? Was it expansive? Did you, you know, what was the research? I'm just curious to come up with the concept and just hear from the different, whether it's orthopedic surgeons or anyone else saying, we need something else besides metal. And what did that look like as far as trying to figure that out and getting to the point where you're at now? Because obviously, like all this technology, it starts somewhere.
You're talking about developing the technology or developing the go-to-market plan? Well,
no, just really just kind of just having the conversations. You know, how did those conversations start with other doctors and realizing that, you know, there was a market for something like this, and how do we get to the point where we can get away from metal?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, like I said earlier, the market had already been kind of validated. The need had been validated. Everybody's been trying to bring, you know, non-permanent implants to market that can be mainstream. I mean, we wanted this to be the first credible replacement to metal implants and other permanent implants like PEEK. Aron Price-Bloom is our founder. He deserves all the credit for this. I call him the Elon Musk of orthopedic fixation materials. He's a very talented biomedical engineer, studied at Columbia University, orthopedic research department. His thesis was the interaction of metal and bone. He became very obsessed with the fact that there's so much innovation in orthopedics. I mean, there's a lot of innovation in this part of med tech, but fixation materials is not one of them. And they're problematic for all the reasons that we know. Of course, it works, and been using it for 100+ years. But why are we going to put somebody on Mars in the next 10, 15 years, and we're still using metal implants? It's kind of ridiculous. So he was obsessed with it, and was able to bring this concept to life. And we got some smart, early advisors around us. We were able to raise money. We were able to get some seed money from the Israeli government because the technology center is based in Israel.
Okay.
And we were able to get it off the ground and get it into some successful animal studies. When we started, when we kind of got our plans together to go to market in the United States, when we, in about 2017 is when we opened up the Boston headquarters and started hiring people in the United States. And at that point, we began to go out and try to understand the perceptions of the market around non-permanent implants. And what we found was what we thought we would find, which is everybody loves the idea. There's not a single surgeon that just says, yeah, that's not a good idea. Like, why are you even, thinking about this? That's not even the, kind of validating the need we don't even need to do. We have to prove that this is different from prior attempts. And so we had to get out and we had to understand what did they like and dislike about, the other non-permanent implants that have been on the market, are still on the market, including the biocomposite market, which is still that's been a successful part of non-permanent implants, is shoulder biocomposite anchors. But otherwise, anything weight bearing has not been typically. So we had to go out and try to understand, how would the market view this? How do we need to explain it? And we just decided to go out and just be as transparent as we possibly could with how we make it, all the animal studies. We wanted to be a very scientific company. We wanted that to be part of our brand personalities, to be very scientific and innovative. And we also decided to brand the category differently, which is biointegrative. And that has been a term that I think has been very sticky for us. Because once you have a chance to explain this to a surgeon or even to a patient, it just makes a lot of sense, and then people want to evaluate it and try it.
Yeah.
So
I think, Will, also you're trying to get at the way these surgeons think. Again, I'm obviously just one of them. There's many of them. All the stuff that Brennan's saying is really good, right? And we listen to that. But obviously the same thing is it's got to perform when you actually do it. So when I did my first trial, so everyone can hear this, I picked the hardest scenario because I was like, if it doesn't mess up on this, then we're good. Right. So I ate the tibia, which is the tibial bone. And so I do certain surgeries that require the fixation of the tibia. And I have tried a lot of anchors, and I've had a lot of reps upset when they crack when I'm doing them. And I remember the first time I put one of these in, I put it in and it just kept squeaking, which means, as squeaking in the wall means like there's only two ways this is going. It's going to snap in half.
Or it's going to
I'm not going to be done using it, or it's going to go all the way down and it's going to work. So I remember doing it and went all the way down. I look over at the rep and I said, how did you guys do that? I was sure this thing was going to crack because I heard it squeaking the entire time. And then the next time I did it, I was like, let me make this even harder. So, you're supposed to tap up the screw. He's like, the rep's like, do only a little bit. And I was like, dude, that's going to break for sure. And I did the exact same thing, but I'm like, if this breaks, it's no big deal, right? The cool part about these implants is, again, it doesn't happen, but if they crack, you can just drill it out and do it again. It's not like when you have a wall, you have a whole hole, you can't use it again. Yeah. So I tried it again and it squeaked even more. And I'm like, this is definitely going to break. And sure enough, it didn't. And I looked at him, I was like, where can I get more of these? This is awesome. So that's also, honestly, Will, I hate to tell you, Brennan can talk all day about all the data he says, and that's really great. And that helps me feel good to tell my patients about it. But in the end, it's got to perform. It's just like these athletes, right? Like all day you can train, but if you can't shoot the hoops, there's no point in even being on the court. So anyhow, go to the next slide. This is really good. So you can see where they're at. I mean, Brennan, you can see where we're going to ask about what are the service lines you're looking at. We want to make sure we get to all this stuff because we could go all day with this. But
So
if you want to kind of go over this.
again, we see this as a platform technology, and you could make endless number of implants across all the sectors of orthopedics. I mean, Aran, our founder, he wanted to go into spine first. And we were like, well, maybe let's pick a different space first. That's a little bit of the wild, wild west right now.
But he is the Elon Musk, so he's just taking it one step.
Listen, we think there are many great applications in spine, but we said, why don't we start with foot and ankle? And we started in foot and ankle for a few reasons. One is we thought that was maybe where the biggest unmet need existed, because you're walking on these implants, people feel them in their feet, even when you have a successful union.
Well, a lot of removal of hardware is probably the highest one.
Yeah, very high hardware removal rate.
We'll go to the next slide, I think.
And there just wasn't a lot of non-permanent implants available for that market. So we went to that market first, and we've had a lot of success in that market. We're over 40,000 implantations now. And that just in a few years. And so this is our current portfolio. Thanks for pulling this up. We started off with something really easy. We thought, geez, a hammer toe implant would be really an easy place to start. It's also an interesting study because we did our first in human study was in hammer toe, and not because we wanted to we were super interested in hammer toe. It's just that we wanted to show biointegration and safety and efficacy. And that implant fills up a lot of that intramedullary space. So it's actually a really good test. But anyway, so we start off with a hammer toe. We introduced these nails. These nails, think about rebar. Anywhere where you need stability or strength, if you need to add fixation, these trimmable nails are super interesting to use, really strong. You can hang 350 pounds off the end of one of these nails, and you can trim them. You can customize them. And then we introduced screws. We then followed with the suture anchors that you've used, Dr. Garcia. Then the different staples, and then we have a new product that we literally launched a few weeks ago, which is the fully threaded trimmable nail, or it's kind of like a fully threaded screw, but we have a really interesting way to trim them and then to resharpen the tip. So it solves the scourge of the industry. That one of the biggest problems in the industry is inventory management. Imagine one length screw, essentially it's a nail, and you trim it, and then you've got a little pencil sharpener there, and you basically have a driver that's adjustable, and you would just adjust the driver to the length of the nail after you cut it, and then you just resharpen the tip, and then you put it in. You can drive it in really easily. You don't even have to tap.
The idea is
you don't have to. So
the idea is you can have one long nail and put in 3 small screws with it. Is that what you're saying?
No, you can have one long nail. Oh, so on the trimmable nail, just the typical nails, the ones we've had for a while, you can cut those in half or in 3 pieces, and you can get 2 or 3 implants out of those nails. The fully threaded nail, I think that may be difficult to do. I think you're going to get 1 implant out of that nail. You're just going to be able to trim it to length.
Yes. So you're only having one size
on the table.
So you're not having to have like 10. So, Will, the other issue you have with these implants is obviously stock, right? Like I'm lucky I've got a pretty good stock area, but like I can't carry every single size. So what he's saying is it comes in and you have one size fits all, and then you can adjust it and customize it. So it means everything's a lot easier.
Yeah. I love that wording, the pencil sharpener. It's like, okay, it's 3 inches long. We need to get it down to 2.5. Well, we're just gonna, just use the trimmable nail and get it down to 2.5 where I need it, and there you go. There's the exact size that you need for whatever the size of the bone or the area that you're going in. Because as we know, every person is built differently. Everyone is a little bit longer or shorter or things like that. So that's a great concept. What was the mindset behind that? Was it just realizing that there was a need and finding a tool would, satisfy that?
Well, yeah, I mean, our compression screws are partially threaded compression screws. They're really strong, but they're not as sharp as metal. So you do have to tap them in hard bone, especially. with the fully threaded nail, you don't have to tap because the driver extends through the along the nail. So you don't have all the torque in the head. And also it gives you better visibility when you're placing the implant because the driver, you can see the tip of the driver at the very end of the implant.
Yes, Will, that's a good point you brought up. You can't see them on x-ray either. So after you're done, you have to be able to find it. So this is why they did the beat the trick on there.
Yeah, so we actually used instrumentation to solve a few of the maybe some of the minor objections we had with our original screw. And we think this is the platform moving forward. And the compression you get is amazing. And the squeaking, the surgeons love the squeak. And I think this is a great TTO product for sports medicine surgeons, a great product for using for TTOs and some of the other applications. But we're going to have 4.5. We have 5.5s. We're going to launch next month. And we also have a hand and wrist. So we have a kit for foot and ankle and sports medicine, other, kind of a universal kit. And then we have one that's specific to hand and wrist so they can use these as metacarpal nails. So you asked, like, in terms of what sectors we're in foot and ankle. We've been in foot and ankle for 5 years. We've been in sports medicine for about a year. We're having great success in sports medicine right now. And then we're kind of entering hand and wrist. We've been doing hand and wrist cases, but this is our first like specific hand and wrist product is the threaded trimmable nail with the hand and wrist kit for metacarpal surgery. Which obviously you hate to revise those with metal in the way. And patients don't want metal in their hands. So, we think this is a winner for that application too. Really excited about this product. And we'll continue to we'll make smaller diameters and we'll make larger diameters. We want to make big 7.0s for big hindfoot surgeries, hip, things like that.
Yeah. Will, I want to tell you one more thing. So this product, again, I had the older trimmable nail. I remember they showed me and they brought it in. They were like, okay, so they gave it to me. And this is all part of the intro talk with the surgeon. And they said, and I've had this before where it hasn't gone well, not with you guys, but other companies. And they said, break it. And I was like, okay. So he goes, break it, bend it. You're strong. You think you're strong, break it. And you're talking about, it's this, I don't even know. It's as long as this chapstick, right? But if it's thin, this is only 4.5 millimeters. That's not very thin. That's not very thick. And they were like, break it with your hands. So I'm like squeezing and it's literally not moving. And I'm put it on the table and I'm trying to break it. You can't break it on the table. So right then and there, you're like, okay, what's going on here with this? Not only is it not breaking, the threads are not shaving off. So that's a pretty impressive product. I remember specifically doing that because I was 99% sure it was going to crack in half.
I'm glad it didn't. I wouldn't expect it to.
What?
But yeah.
But you know what though? That's how you guys. That's how you guys get people to believe it because remember, Will, the thing about this product is it's budding what we're so used to. We're used to really integrative materials being soft and really strong materials not being integrative. So it's just it's so different that it just takes a lot of people to figure it out and a lot of time with people. And it takes us, for someone like me, it just takes me, I got to see this to believe it, right? I got to try this. I got to test how strong it is. Then I got to see how the patients do. And again, I've seen plenty of studies on this. I know the product works well. I'm not concerned about this in terms of recovery from the patients or cystic changes. I feel really good about it. But the hardness to me was the hardest part for me to bear. And I needed to test it out on the hardest stuff. And I've been pretty impressed. So
Brennan,
sorry, go. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, you've been with the company now for a while. What was that wow moment for you when you were like, obviously, you were all in, you believed in the product, but from seeing the products, we saw the timeline, right, up till now. What was that wow moment for you saying, okay, we got something incredible on our hands and the future is just sky's the limit?
Gosh, that's a tough question. There's been a lot of wow moments. I'll give you a recent one and then I'll maybe try to back up and give you some of the early ones. I think a recent one is getting the pediatric label from the FDA, being able to treat children down to 2 years old. That was a big vote of confidence by the agency in our technology, and having surgeons across different specialties that have treated pediatric patients tell us success stories, show us x-rays. We've been able to interview some of the parents and some of the children. That's a major wow factor because when we all first thought about this opportunity, should we do Ossio or not? we always thought that avoiding a second surgery for a child that falls off a bike or breaks their ankle is that's kind of the holy grail. That's why you get out of bed in the morning. It's not just the money, it's not the resume, it's not all the other benefits that, all the other motivators that are kind of exist in jobs. It was, gosh, that's just a really cool thing to be able to do, is to put these in children, have them just turn into their own bone, and they don't have to go back for a second surgery and go through all that pain and all the hassle of having to do that. So that's been very exciting for us as of late. Early on, I think it was just having surgeons use the product, having them be so impressed with the strength of it, but more importantly, having them tell us 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, they're like, God, my patients are doing so well. And no one's complaining. Like, no one comes back and says, oh, I've got this, I've got all this swelling now a year out. I mean, we just didn't hear that. And so that's
a foot and ankle thing too, what you brought up, Brennan. I mean, they all say they picked foot and ankle because the market was underserved, but they also pick foot and ankle because, like I said, I tried it on the tibia. The foot and ankle stuff, if the hardware is not going to work with foot and ankle, it's not going to work anywhere else. It's the hardest place to heal. It's the smallest place. It's the place that patients complain by far the most of hardware, right? You guys, the easiest thing for you guys would have been to start with sports, right? The sports has a lot of innovative, but there's not as much stuff. You picked the hardest one. I mean, spine would have been a hard one, but it wouldn't be the same because the patients have a lot of other stuff going on, right? Like, you pick the one where, like, my mom's had multiple foot surgeries before. I know how hard it is to recover. I've done plenty of foot surgeries at HSS, and you picked a very difficult one. And the fact is that market was so successful that you moved on to other ones should tell people how this product's doing.
Exactly. One thing that kind of I was thinking about as we were thinking about entering foot and ankle was seeing all of the competitors in foot and ankle. They were like, I don't know, there were like 25 or more companies that make hardware for foot and ankle. And I thought, geez, that's a really red ocean. But in some ways, it told you that, first of all, these are all great competitors. There's a lot of phenomenal startups and big companies that compete in foot and ankle. But when you have that many companies making hardware, you wonder, how does the market support that many companies? And I've thought, maybe it's because they're just not very differentiated, and there's nothing that's really come in that's replaced all of it. Now, that would take many years to really knock out all these other products, but when a market's that noisy, you just say to yourself, geez, maybe if there was one great product, you wouldn't have to have 30 different companies with hardware. Maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but we thought that was both a sign that's very competitive, so it's going to be difficult, which it is, but it's also because there's little differentiation, that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity.
Well, it's also not someone dominating, right? It's you're saying, like, when there's 200 answers for something, clearly maybe we don't have the answer yet.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if someone had the right thing that worked every time, the other companies wouldn't be able to compete.
Exactly.
Right. They'd be out. Right now, oh, my screw's a little different than this screw. My plate's a little different than this plate. It's all the repetitive same stuff, so they can take their market shares and spread them out. So, Will, it's as a matter of fact, the more competitors you have, the better. It's a kind of a backwards thing to think about. But what you're saying is perfect.
Well, the competitors are starting to, spread thin, because top 10 innovations in podiatry, Best Technology Award, Best Practices Award, Global Excellence Award, Best Orthopedic Medical Device Company. Your award-winning technology is on display and is getting recognized. So competitors, I know it's a very competitive field, but you guys are definitely leading the way. And I'll let you get back on topic, as we always tend to steer in different directions there. Let me get back that beautiful slide there. But congratulations. I mean, the awards, the recognition, it's got to be exciting when you get that, notification, when the company, when the founder gets recognized like that. So it's got to be a special thing, just to validate all the work that you guys are doing.
Will, let's show that foot and ankle side in the sake of time. I want to keep going. There we go. Show them that. And Brennan, you tell this why it's such a big deal.
Yeah. Again, not that anybody's watching your show to to look at hammer toe studies. There's more. I'm sure there's more.
You never know. You never know.
There's might be more exciting things to talk about. Although it's a highly prevalent issue, and it's an important issue for people. So we did that. That was our first product. So we did our first in human study using a hammer toe implant, and not because the market needed another hammer toe implant or another hammer toe implant paper. But it was a great first study for us because we were looking really at safety and efficacy and biointegration. And a hammer toe implant actually fills up quite a bit of an intramedullary canal. So it's actually a really good test. You really put it to the test. And you can see here on x-ray, you can see it 2 years. You can't see it on x-ray. It's in that second toe there.
There's no joint left, guys. You can see there's no joint left. It just looks like a big long bone.
Yeah, it's a big fusion, nice fusion there. That's what you want to see when you get your hammer toe fixed. And then on the right side is MRI, and you can see there's no fluid accumulation, and the implant is gone at 2 years. So that was the basis for some of our first publications that came out, first human publications, and these were really important. By the way, we got great fusion rates for hammer toe implant.
96%. Well, if I did anything in my life, 96% would be good. So let's go to the next study. Let's go to the next study for him to show.
100% patient satisfaction. That was one of the most important metrics. We actually that was an endpoint in the study, was patient satisfaction. We had 100% patient satisfaction, and usually patients aren't too happy with hammer toes. It's just a tough procedure. So we thought that was really, really good.
All this is really good. I know you want to go this. I want you to touch on that last one, the biocomposite comparison, and I want to show people the difference. Because people say, when I have a biocomposite anchor, I've got an anchor that's turns into bone, it turns in right away, right? I want you to show this 24-month thing.
Yeah. So I believe one of your mentors, Brian Cole, Brian Cole did this study with us, and we did this at the vet school at Colorado State, and we compared osteofiber to a couple of the leading biocomposite anchors in the market. And we were looking at a couple of things, strength at implantation. We did really well there. And then on biointegration, what we saw at 2 years, we're essentially completely biointegrated at that point. And what we saw with the biocomposite anchors is they really haven't broken down very much at that point. There really is not a lot of degradation that's happened. There's a lot of anchor left. And so at 2 years, we didn't see much of a...
So Will, when people are selling some of these things, they're telling you, my biocomposite anchor, you want to use it because it turns into bone. And the idea is that more surgeons know this, and we all know this, that it might turn into more bone than a plastic one, right? Because that's not going to go anywhere. That's inert. But it's not going to turn into bone as fast as you think. And they can leave behind reactions, which is why he keeps saying it did not react, because the common thought process is reaction happens with these. It's cystic changes. I mean, look at that. That's still not integrated. You see them too, Will? I mean, you have an MD from the show, but outside of that, but you know what I mean, Will? Can you see the differences in that?
Oh yeah, 100%. You can definitely see it. You can tell the difference on the graph.
One of the other things that's really cool about this study, we looked at graft cellularity. So we wanted to see, the biologics around the kind of the anchor graft interface, and we had a statistically significantly better, higher graft cellularity versus the control. So we thought that was really interesting. So it heals really, really nicely. In addition to the strength, this heals really, really well.
All right, let's go to the next one and see if there's anything on there. So this is pretty cool. This knee bar thing is what I talked to you guys about when I said, if you put it through something, it can kind of heal it, because actually it might promote healing because of the way it's structured, right? Is that part of the thought process?
Yeah. Again, we're evaluating this in a clinical study right now. Looking at our trimmable nails that are already on the market, indicated for fracture fixation. Looking in the knee at treating insufficiency fractures, and is the raftering, basically is the kind of the scaffolding from these nails, is that having an effect, and is the kind of the bone regeneration around that implant having an effect to reduce edema and pain? Again, we're doing a study. We're seeing very, very promising results. I know Dr. Cole's a manuscript that's hopefully we'll get a publication soon. There's something that's in process right now on the feasibility, the initial feasibility, and this looks very promising. We're still learning. We're still trying to perfect the technique, but we're very excited about the potential for this application in insufficiency.
But it's interesting for them. It's interesting to see this stuff. I mean, this stuff is pretty impressive because we've all tried this. Well, so in this stuff you're seeing here, this edema, this is what pain it comes from. And so I'll do, if they have this, it's either, you have to do, if it eventually gets bad enough, you do a knee replacement, right? So if you can turn you see there, the one on the right, you see all of them, you see the white stuff going to no white. That's a really good thing. That's a really, really good. That means that person doesn't have pain anymore, generally speaking. So this is the idea that you can do this without having to do a lot of other stuff. Because some of the stuff on the market now is, you blow it up with calcium and that actually really hurts, right? Versus something that's a screw that they're not going to feel. I mean, people don't generally feel screws when you put them in after the first few months, but they have achiness from the screw later on, sometimes with the change in weather. But the idea that you're putting the screw in, it's not a very painful process after the first few weeks. But the idea is that it heals in, which is pretty cool. So.
And Will, you asked about the wow factor. This has been a big wow factor for us. We've been a little stealthy with this because we wanted to make sure we had good scientific evidence before we really went out and pursued this. But the wow factor is definitely there. The patients are really happy about their result, and the surgeons are really, really excited about what they're seeing so far. More to come on this.
And
maybe another episode.
The wow factor is really the next slide that's coming up, right? And even if you're not sure exactly all the things you talked about, it's clear as day when you look at the results from the examples of metal to what Ossio, the comparison. I mean, the pictures speak 1,000 words. I have a buddy that broke his fibula and tibula jogging, a nasty accident. He has a rod and he had metal screws put in and they didn't get taken out. So he still has them and he has a bunch of complications. At times he could feel them. So having metal in his body at 53 years old and getting older in New York City with the heat, humidity, cold, we didn't even talk about how the weather makes the body feel, right? We just dealing with all of those elements, especially on the East Coast where you have the extreme temperatures. I mean, he talks about it. So seeing this right here and seeing this slide, an example of metal compared to Ossio, the picture says 1,000 words.
We treated we actually have a video on our website. You can look at it. There was a Kentucky Derby jockey out of Louisville, Kentucky, really great guy. And he had metal. He had a lot of metal from a lot of accidents. These jockeys get, thrown off these horses a lot.
Oh,
yeah.
So
he had a lot of metal in his foot and his ankle. And in the winter, they would get so cold, he would go back down to Louisiana and train down there because he couldn't stand how his foot felt. So he actually had the hardware removed and they replaced it with osteofiber, and it's been a game changer for him. So we made a video with him. It was really inspirational. The other thing that's been really fun is we've been advertising on Meta, the different Meta platforms, around elective procedures, primarily bunions, hammer toe procedures, things that patients research and shop for. A lot of people stay on the sidelines because they're afraid of surgery. And so we've been, bringing awareness to the patient community, and the reception we've gotten has been overwhelming. We have about 350 surgeons on our surgeon locator. So far this year, we've had over 100,000 patients click our ads and then go to our locator. 100,000. And we're not even spending that much money on advertising. I mean, we're a small company. We're not spending like millions of dollars on this. So we're getting a really strong interest, a really strong patient demand, and they're asking for it. They're going to their surgeon and saying, "I want osteofiber." And and I'm seeing them. By the way, I'm seeing patients now in chat rooms, and they're like resource groups that are online, like these Facebook bunion groups and things like that. And they're in there and they're talking about osteofiber. And it's really, really, really great to see that, because the more patients are educated about this, the more they can go in as an informed consumer and say, "Hey, is this right for me? And if it is, I want it." And and they rave about it. So that's been a strategy of ours to educate patients about this. And certain sports medicine applications might be tough to advertise because I don't know, people really shop for, okay, what kind of an anchor am I going to get when I have rotator cuff surgery and things like that. But there are definitely opportunities there that we're also exploring in terms of some of those applications that are more relevant to your practice, Dr. Garcia.
Well, you know, I would counter you, Brennan, and tell you that patients come in asking for everything that I do. They ask for every possible thing you could think of. They're like, I want this type of surgery. And Will, we've talked about this before with a lot of the other companies. You know, they come in asking for specific things. I mean, today in the office, I had 3 or 4 specific requests for specific surgeries, specific implants. So they're really educated. We're in Seattle. They're like doing, you know, I bet you half my patients are already on your chat blog, and they're going to be going on there now to figure out what this thing is and ask for it. So I would say that this happens everywhere. And any surgeon that does a practice where they're reliant on patients to look them up and find things and come to their website and things like that, this is a great opportunity from a marketing standpoint for a good product that differentiates itself and to be able to offer this for your patients, because they're going to ask for it. And these surgeons that say they don't ever ask for it, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I just do my surgery the way you do it. Well, that's okay. You can be left in the dust if you want. But it's important that you understand that this is coming, whether you like it or not. This is an excellent product, and patients are going to ask for it, Brennan, even with your small amount of marketing.
And if you're going to ask for it, you know what to say already, right? Don't settle for metal.
Don't settle for metal. Only nature remains, baby. Leave nothing behind.
Leave nothing behind. It's right on the website. It's amazing. I love it. I'm all for it. Whoever put that up there, give them a shout out.
The problem is now Will's going to repeat it like over the next 5 podcasts.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna say it every show. It's going to be like a little Easter egg. Yeah, that's great, man. Don't settle for metal.
There's a great foot and ankle surgeon in Baltimore, Stuart Miller. All the foot and ankle surgeons know Stuart Miller, and he used to say, when we first introduced Ossio to him, he used to say, "I just want to set it and forget it. You set it and forget it. I just want to treat that. I want to just put that implant in there and not have to worry about it again. Set it and forget it." So always remember that one.
It's like an infomercial. I love it.
Exactly.
So Will, we're now out of time.
We are out of time. Let's say goodbye to Brennan. Brennan, thank you so much for your time. I mean, we've talked about it. Check out ossio.io. I mean, the webpage is amazing. I mean, we don't need to say anything. I mean, the awards speak for themselves. We wish you and your family, you know, just speedy recovery for the house, for the home, getting back, kicking the kids out, or if not putting them to work, whatever it is. We just wish the best for you and your family. And I'm hoping that this is a positive, right? To get the family back under the roof and, you know, spend some quality time. And I know you kicked them out of the room because you were doing the show. So we really appreciate it. That was pretty fun.
Thank you.
I keep telling myself that, Will. That's good. It's a good positive outlook. So no, we're happy to be together. And listen, guys, if you buy a house in a flood zone, just make sure it's up really, really high. Okay. Just that's my lesson. Let me serve as a warning to others. Okay.
All right. Or have some kayaks or something. We'll figure it out.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much, Brennan.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciated talking to you. Enjoyed the opportunity. And Dr. Garcia, I'm so happy your patients are doing so well with this technology. So thanks again, guys. Great to meet you, Will.
Thank you. Likewise. Dr. Garcia, that was Brennan Marilla. I mean, providing information, right? And talking about tech. And we emphasize a lot on the tech. And I mean, Ossio speaks for itself. Don't settle for metal. I'm going to say it all the time. Don't settle for metal. I'm going to drive you crazy. All right. Enough of that. Will Sanchez, Dr. Grant Garcia. Do you want anything before you wrap it up, Dr. Garcia?
I don't know. Check it out. This product's awesome. Check out the stuff they're doing. I hope the people are informed. Again, it's all orthopedics, all sports, all the time. Obviously, we talked about some other specialties, but it was good. Follow us. We're almost running out of time because they're not going to like it if we go over an hour. So thank you.
All right, people. Don't settle for metal.